Welcome to the newest episode of Sports Talk Central. I'm your host, Deep Mahmood, with my normal co-host, Hunter. And today we're going to be talking about the NFL release schedule. Just talk about the schedule and what we thoughts are. So, Ravens and Steelers, they got their schedule out. What was your thoughts on the Steelers?
Well, the beginning is not that bad, right? So you start out with the game against the Falcons. It's a nice little Arthur Smith revenge game. Then you have the Broncos, a Russell Wilson revenge game. Then you play the Chargers. Then I believe you also have the Colts. Those first four games. That's a pretty fine first four games, right? I think the Steelers can go at worst 2-2 through those four, 3-1, 4-0 at best, in my opinion. But what I don't understand is how do you not schedule any divisional games until week 11? Or excuse me, the first 11 weeks of the season. They will play 6 of their final 8 games against AFC North teams.
Yeah, and
I don't know where the schedule maker. Go ahead.
Eagles are the other NFC team as well, so it's not like it's the easy one.
It's just very no. So you want to know 6 of the final 8 games? Who can you give me the other 2? You already said the Eagles. Guess who else they play? The other team. Don't look.
Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Chiefs.
You got it. It's the Chiefs. 6 of their final 8 against those 3 teams: the Ravens, the Browns, and the Bengals, and a game at Philadelphia, and a game on Christmas against the Chiefs. What sicko simulated the schedule to get that kind of outcome for the Steelers in the final?
There's also a bigger problem that they share with the Ravens, but when I get to that point, I can just discuss that part.
Like right now, it looks daunting, but I try not to overreact just because their end of season schedule looked really daunting last year, right? But injuries happen. Teams aren't as good as maybe some expect them to be. So right now, it looks daunting just because the AFC North, I think, is the best division in football. The Chiefs are going for a three-peat. I think the Eagles are going to be a better team next year. But that is a very tough schedule as it stands right now. And there's a lot of tough road stretches in there. That game on Christmas against Kansas City, we already discussed a little bit too. But, that's going to be tough. Outside of the 6 of the last 8 games, the schedule, I think, is manageable, especially at the beginning. But they need to rack up some wins in the first half to, I think, have an edge heading into the second half of the season.
Yeah, sorry about that. My dad.
You're okay.
Problem. No, first, when you look at the end of the schedule, end of the season, you try to figure out the other conference of it. You're in the AFC, the NFC games. Are they in the beginning? Are they in the earlier part of the season? You got good news. Your NFC schedule is largely in the first half. You got bad news on that front as well, because your NFC schedule is in the first part of the season. You typically, I don't know what you think about it, but I personally would rather have it at the end of the season because those games don't mean much in terms of playoff implications. And the worst news is this. That one game at the end of the year, you have one, which could be good news, but it's also against the Eagles, which is probably Eagles, Commanders, Giants, Cowboys, Falcons. Eagles are clearly, on paper, the best team out of those 5. So you're kind of there. Yeah. I think the Chiefs, I think where it gets really interesting, I think the point I was going to make, and I want to bring up with the Ravens, is this. The NFL, what has been their things they claim to care about? Player safety. Okay, that's fine. You want to have a Thursday night game? Great. You want to have a Monday night game? Fine. The Ravens and Steelers have 3 games in 10 days. We have enough anecdotal evidence to suggest that the biggest winner of a Ravens and Steelers game it's the team that they play next. Is that fair to say? Is that a fair assessment?
With how physical those games are, yes, 100%.
Combine that with the Ravens and Steelers will play on the 21st. I'm sorry. The Ravens and Steelers will play in between that schedule. That's insane.
They play on that Saturday against each
Yes.
other, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
And then they both play on Christmas.
Yes. So I don't want to hear anything about player safety if you're going to do this. That's the first thing. So from the Steelers, your schedule doesn't look too bad. It definitely seems like you said it's definitely easier in the first part, tougher in the second part. But at the end of the day, the difficulty of the schedule is going to be determined based off of the week that you play them, not when you look at them right now, because we can look at this. We can look at the schedule right now and say, "Oh, the Falcons are a joke. The Jets are a joke." Right? We can look at them right now and say, teams that you think are good might be weaker when you play them, and teams that are bad might be stronger when you play them. So that's the other thing. So this whole thing of the first half of the schedule being on paper weaker is true, but maybe it might be more balanced, might be more the other way around. Because
the Falcons will be the toughest, I think, of those 4 games for the Steelers, just because Kirk Cousins will be fully healthy and they have weapons. So I think indeed there's an argument that they could win the NFC South this year.
Is Anthony Richardson going to play in week 2, or do you think he's healthy?
I think he should be healthy for that game, right?
Should be, yeah.
Yeah.
And despite the NFL schedule makers tempting fate with Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers, Leonard Floyd on the other side of the field, we'll see who the quarterback is.
The most prime time. Can you give me the team that has the most primetime games this year? There's 3 of them.
Ravens, Jets.
You have one of them. The Jets is one of them.
Yeah. Can't think of the other 2. Like, that's tough.
The Cowboys and the 49ers.
Yep. Sure expect the Cowboys. And by the way, the Cowboys, the first game that Tom Brady will be the main play-by-play guy, Cowboys and Browns. Which, by the way, I feel bad for Greg Olsen.
Color commentator, not play-by-play. Color commentator.
Okay,
yeah.
color commentator. I'm sure him and Greg Olsen and Tom Brady are good friends, but man, it must suck. Because did you see that story about how he was supposed to because he's one of the main people. He would have gotten $10 million, but now he's in the second team, so now he's getting 3. That has to suck.
I talked to Olsen about it. I did an interview with him for work, and I squeezed a question in there about it just because I felt like I kind of had to. He downplayed it, as I knew he would, but I could tell when he was answering it, just like the way he was looking at me and just the way his body language was, he was a bit upset. I mean, how could you not? You go from the number 1, job with Kevin Burkhardt, and I thought they were a great team together, to basically getting demoted because Brady signed a 10-year, almost $400 million contract to be the lead color commentator. But yes, it is going to be Brady for Cowboys-Browns that game. And, I'm excited to see how he does as a color commentator. We all know what he did on the field, but he obviously knows a crap ton about the sport. So I'm curious to see how that translates over to a TV broadcast. How does he prepare?
I got 2 fears. I got 2 fears with Tom Brady. And granted, over time, I think he'll learn to manage it better. One fear. He knows so much about football. Let's be clear about this.
Yeah.
He knows he can forget more about football than we will ever know. The problem is he going to get too inside baseball with the analysis? When something happens, is he going to be too technical about it? Because that's the one thing he has to balance out. He has to explain what went right, what went wrong, but you have to tailor that to an audience that isn't as in tuned. Just because it makes sense to you, that doesn't mean it'll make sense to everyone else. I think he'll get better at that over time with the way he prepares, but that's one fear. The second fear is he is a bit of an older head when it comes to football. Is he going to be too old school? Is he going to, and is that, and again, I think he's definitely been more modern. He's going, like, with the whole analytics and everything, but is he going to be too much of an old head in certain situations? Over time, I think he'll get better at it, but that is something that I think he's going to work on. As for the Ravens, obviously they start the year against Kansas City. Kansas City has started off slow last few years. Obviously, more than likely, Rashee Rice isn't going to be there for that game. Xavier Worthy still has to adjust to the NFL. Marquise Brown still has to fit. I think this is the right time for the Ravens to play Kansas City. On the other end, Zach Ward, this is his first year. It'll be his first game as a defensive coordinator. So there's still the downplay there. Roquan is definitely going to have, definitely going to inspire them, and I think the Ravens have that carrot on the back of, with the championship banner that the Chiefs are going to pull out there. I mean, Justin Tucker is going to be the classier kicker out of the two teams. We don't have to get too much. We're not getting too much into that, but if you remember the AFC Championship game, Travis Kelce and Mahomes, they kicked Tucker's thing. I thought that was a little weird. Maybe it was the whole thing off the field with Travis. Maybe there were some frustrations going on there, and maybe that's kind of what was going on. That felt weird, but both teams do prepare well. I think the Ravens could have a good chance in that one. There's the first 4 games. The Ravens, I think, are going to fall flat on their feet in one of these games between Vegas, Cowboys, Bills. I think they're going to lose one of them. I don't know which one. It could very well be the Cowboys. It could very well be the Bills. They just seem to, in that first month, they have that game where Harbaugh would make a decision that people would celebrate if it worked. Criticize if it doesn't. It'll happen there. But the schedule, I mean, Bengals not too bad. Commanders, Buccaneers. That's if you want to look for a period where something wonky could happen. The Commanders, Buccaneers, Browns. I would say that's another area. Obviously, Harbaugh is going to be on Thanksgiving. That's kind of, everyone kind of expected that. Eagles, that's going to be an interesting one. And then we touched upon the whole 3 games in 10 days. Giants, December 15th, Steelers, December 21st, Texans. I'm not a fan of the Steelers kind of being in between those 2 games. Like, I would have preferred maybe the Steelers being the Steelers game be the first or third. I think I said earlier that the NFC schedule, to me, I think where the NFC schedule is kind of more balanced here because you have the Giants in Week 15, and who knows if it's Tommy DeVito or if it's Daniel Jones or whoever the quarterback is. I like the easier NFC schedule there. Eagles are a tough team. What I will say about the Eagles, and I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this one, is the Eagles locker room going to be held together in the later part of the year? Because
I would think so. I know Jason Kelce's not there anymore, but it seems like with Sirianni coming back, the other changes they made with their coaching staff, the players they brought in, they were looking, I think, for a fresh start for this season. And I think with Sirianni, I do think he's a good coach in the NFL. I don't think he's one of the best, but I think he's good enough to the point where I don't think you're going to see that locker room fracture the way it did at the end of the season. I mean, this team was 10-1 through 11 games before all hell broke loose in Philly. I do think the Eagles are going to be much improved for next year. I don't think they're going to win 10 of their first 11 games, but I think they're going to be better than where they were this past year. I mean, they didn't even win the NFC East this season. That was the Dallas Cowboys. So I think they should be the favorites to win the division, but I think the locker room it's being a little overblown right now. I think it's not going to be that big of an issue for next year.
Yeah, so now let's move on to the rest of the NFL schedule. This is more focused on some of the other quirks about it. So obviously the international games there, we are going to see the Brazil for the first time,
Yep.
Green Bay versus Philly, London, obviously Jets, Vikings, that's going to be there, Jaguars, Bears. That's going to be at Tottenham Hotspur. And then at Wembley, it's going to be Patriots, Jaguars. And then the Germany game will be Giants, Panthers. What are your thoughts on those matchups for the
A lot of
international
these
market?
matchups, I hate to say this, Adi, a lot of these overseas matchups just suck. Like, can we say
Right.
it? Can I say that without being a hot take? Like, you just rattled off all those matchups right there. Outside of the early season one, the Brazil one, I believe, I don't think I'm excited for a single overseas matchup. It's fun getting up a little earlier to watch football, but those are mostly going to be between teams who are probably not going to be that good this season. So I just want to see them make a better international schedule overall for future seasons. Again, the Brazil one's going to be fun, but the other games, like especially in London, in England, and a couple other places, I don't know. They just don't do it for me as much as they used to.
Yeah, I think part of it is also the Jaguars have been like the staple team for it. And
Yeah.
Jaguars have never really been that primary team. And
They
maybe
might as
because
well have
teams
a
don't,
second home there now at this point.
yeah, I mean, maybe teams don't want to have the weird schedule. Like you have to leave a little earlier to get accustomed to the time zone and everything else. And the NFL doesn't want to risk the bigger matchups have potentially being impacted by time zone differences or anything else. So they have the bigger matchups for Sunday night football or Thursday night football or Monday night football where they can manage the situation better there. And then some of these random games where fans would complain about the what if they were prime time, like Patriots Vikings, no offense, no one would care about that matchup, but there's more value to that matchup being international because maybe the international market would not know the nuances. Like, do you think that's part of it? Like, there's an intentional effort to keep the more appealing matchups in a more controlled setting and the less appealing matchups international. Like, do you think there's a strategy to all of that, or?
Maybe a little bit. I would like to see, a team like, I know I'm talking from a Steelers perspective here, but I would like to see a team like the Steelers go overseas again, just because you think of how popular they are, not just in North America, deep, but around the world. Again, I know Steelers fan talking here. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, the Cowboys are America's team. Cowboys are America's team." Well, a lot of people in this fan base say that the Steelers are the world's team, just because of how many fans they have worldwide. So, I just want to see new teams marketed in these games compared to just the same ones. It feels like for the most part almost every year. Keep trying new locations, bring in at least one better matchup. If you want to have some man matchups, okay, that's fine. But give me at least one real good matchup. I know it's an earlier start for most people in the United States, but I'm fine with that. I'll wake up at 9:30 if I have to watch. I mean, I watch the English Premier League for Arsenals, so I'm used to getting up sometimes at 7:30, 8 a.m. on weekends to watch them for soccer. So I just want to see at least one maybe better matchup a year. And if you want to work towards that, that's at least where I'm at, I think.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see some of the more teams like maybe like have the Bears with Caleb Williams kind of
Yeah.
playing international because the idea being that in the United States we can follow these guys in college football. We know Caleb Williams, we know Drake May, we know Jaden Daniels, but guess what? In Europe, people in Brazil or people in Brazil or people in London, people in Germany, they don't know who, like they can hear, they're from the outside perspective of Caleb Williams. I think the way to build American football would be to go and take some of these younger guys, these like Marvin Harrison Jr. and playing them in international. Like just get these younger players, playing them international, build the brand there, and then that way they can kind of get inundated with some of the more other guys. Like Lamar is a celebrity, so it makes sense for him. Like he would be the guy that you like the Ravens to go international because the Ravens have Lamar or like all that other stuff. So I mean, so I think that's why there's also that's the way they could build the international market. The other games,
you just market your stars a bit more. I think that's the biggest thing overall.
Yeah. And then also a few other games. Broncos Saints week 7. That's Thursday Night Football. That is Sean Payton's return to New Orleans. Week 2. Caleb Bears Texans might not seem much, but that's Caleb Williams versus CJ Stroud. So there's some interesting matchups. Week 17, Lions 49ers, obviously NFC Championship game. Week 1, Rams, Lions, Sunday Night Football. We get the reunion. We get the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff Part 2 matchup again. I mean, these are, and also, by the way, week 1, I can't believe we haven't even brought this point up. This might be an interesting game because who have we thought about when we thought about the Rams? Who have we thought of? Aaron Donald. This will be the first time in a long time Aaron Donald is not going to be there.
Also, the Super Bowl rematch during the season. That'll be fun. What week is that again, Adi?
Week 7. Let me check. But it might be week 7.
I believe you're right. Also, there are the Thanksgiving games for everyone that hasn't seen yet. Giants Cowboys, that's the 4:30 game. It's funny that they're doing that for the second time in 3 years. Considering I think how the Giants will be this year, I don't think that's going to be that competitive.
Game. Week 7, 4:25, Fox.
Okay, sweet. I will tune in for that. That's going to be great. But the Thanksgiving schedule, Giants Cowboys, not really too big on that. Then Bears Lions, Caleb Williams versus Jared Goff. I think that'll at least be an entertaining game for the first one. And then to end things off, you have Dolphins Packers. I think that has the potential to be a good game for the nightcap on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to see when
Lambeau for Thanksgiving is always a blast, people. I will always tune in for that, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if there are. I'm just trying to see when the Chiefs will play the Chargers for the first time, because that's going to be Andy Reid, and what are your thoughts on what do you think? Do you think that's the most interesting matchup in the NFC West? Chiefs Chargers.
Say that again. You cut out. Sorry.
The Chiefs and Chargers.
That's gonna be fun seeing that twice a year. I mean, seeing how Jim Harbaugh tries to game plan against Patrick Mahomes, those I think are going to be 2 underrated games this year. With a healthy Justin Herbert back, Patrick Mahomes, obviously Travis Kelce, etc. A nice chess match between Andy Reid and Jim Harbaugh, I think, is incoming. I'm excited for those 2 games, man.
Yeah, and also so it's week 4 and week 14. Those are the 2 things. And then obviously you have the Sean like that NFC West division they have some nice coaches there. Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and potentially Antonio Pierce if he continues to do well. But yeah, I mean I think we're going to end the show on that note. We should be back next week. What we talk about, we'll discuss more. But Virginia Tech obviously had some interesting. Had a huge transfer from Alabama. They just got a guy from Miami a couple days ago who was like a 6'3", 200, might play safety. But they are definitely building up that. They definitely have a ton of experience, and they should be more exciting. And then obviously we'll talk more. We might talk some baseball next week. By the way, I know everyone was talking about. People were talking about Craig Kimbrell, him struggling. He's had 4, I would say, high leverage situations, 4 straight scoreless outings. including a save. So basically the Orioles to put him back into the 7th inning for a little bit. So he had a scoreless outing in the 7th. They had him pitch in the 11th inning in an extra inning game. I want to say that was against the Nationals. Scoreless inning there. And then they had another 7th inning situation and a 9th inning situation today. It seems like they're getting Kimbrel right back on the right track. Also, Gunnar Henderson had another home run. He leads the league now in fifth with 15 home runs. That guy's going to be a legitimate MVP candidate right now. And the Orioles just continue to have really nice owners. I don't know if you saw the games, but David Rubenstein is like throwing hats and koozies like a vendor, like for no like there's like it's not like a giveaway. Like he actually has like a bag of hats like behind home plate and he's throwing it. He's going to the upper deck and throwing it because why the heck not? He was the guest Mr. Splash for a game, so he was actually spraying people with water, and like it is so refreshing to have an owner that actually looks at fans as valuable people rather than an owner that looks at them like peasants. It's just really refreshing to see that. But yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, we'll see you all next week for another show.